Hello, mathematicians. Today we're going to talk about decimal models. You've used place value blocks in the past to represent whole numbers. Today we're going to take those same place value blocks or base 10 blocks to represent decimals. So look at the picture on your screen. This base 10 block where the 1 is underneath used to represent 100. But when we're talking about decimals, when we see one flat, it's going to represent just the number 1. If we see longs with the 10 little pieces in them, those are going to represent a tenth, kind of like a dime if you were talking about money. And if you see separate little blocks or unit cubes, then you are going to notice that those are going to represent a hundredth. The THS is the end, so a hundredth. That these two places are going to be behind the decimal. A hundredth would be the same thing as representing like a penny. So the one flat represents 1, the 5 rods or longs represent 5 tenths, and the 4 small cubes represent 4 hundredths. So the base 10 blocks can represent 1 and 54 hundredths. Money can also be used to show a model. In this case, you see a dollar bill. It's worth 1 whole, just like the flat is worth 1 whole. And then you have a 50-cent piece. So that is worth 50 cents or decimal 50. Same thing as 50 hundredths, or forget about the zeros and say 5 tenths. And then you have 25 cents that will represent 2 longs and 5 little bitty unit cubes. That equals 25 hundredths. A dime means 1 long. A nickel would be 5 unit cubes, and that's represented as 5 cents, or you can say it's 5 hundredths of a dollar because it's the same equivalency as if you had 5 pennies. A penny is worth 1 hundredth. That's 1 cent or 1 piece out of 100. Coins can be used to represent money. So in this case, you have 9 dimes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 9 tenths. So you have 90 cents. And then you have 7 pennies. Well, each penny is worth 1 hundredth. So since there are 7, the 7 has to end up in the hundredths place. So 9 dimes represent 9 tenths or 90 hundredths. And then 7 pennies would represent 7 hundredths. The coins represented 97 cents. Money can be used to represent $2.58. In this case, you have the $2 or the 2 ones. So the 2 needs to be in the ones place. Remember we talked about the ones place is right in front of the decimal? Whereas there are 5 dimes, and each dime is worth a tenth, so 5 tenths. So the 5 has to go in the tenths place. Remember, the tenths place is right behind the decimal. And then you have 8 pennies. Well, that's 8 hundredths because it takes 100 pennies to make a dollar. So there are 8 of them. And then this is the 800ths place, remember? So we have ones and then the decimal and 5 tenths and 8 hundredths. So 2 and 58 hundredths, or since we're talking about money, we would just say $2.58. This grid can represent decimals also. Because there are 10 pieces, it's going to be shaded, or we could shade it to show 1/10. We could shade 2 pieces and it would be 2 tenths. 3 pieces would be 3 tenths, and you get the picture. Over here, this hundreds grid is divided into 100 equal parts. So each part represents 100th. If I were to shade in 35 pieces, then it would equal 35 hundredths. That would come up to 3 long lines and then 5 little pieces. So 35 hundredths. When you see something shaded, they don't usually skip around and make some random design. Usually it's in order, either going from the top to the bottom shading, the whole row or a piece of one row, but they don't usually skip around. Sometimes they do though. Here are 10 grids and they can be shaded to model 2 and 4 tenths. So you see that they have shaded in 2 complete grids. That will represent the whole number. And then you have 4 tenths. There's 10 pieces. It's like a fraction, really, and 4 of them are shaded. So if you want us to show a whole number, the entire grid has to be shaded. Another way to model decimals is to use a number line. In this number line, you will notice that they have split the whole number into 10 pieces, and they have labeled each one a tenth. So when you got to the very end of this number line, it would be worth 1 whole. And what they're showing you is that we have a point on 7 tenths. However, number lines can be split into smaller pieces, such as this one. In this case, we are still showing 1 whole because it goes from 0 to 1. And it does have it split into tenths, as you can see. However, every single tenth has 10 sections. So now we not only have split into tenths, but now you split it into hundredths. So instead of this just being 6 tenths, 7 tenths, we can actually go smaller. 61 hundredths, 62 hundredths, 63 hundredths, 64 hundredths, 65 hundredths, 66 hundredths, 67 hundredths. So we can also model our decimal numbers using a number line. And that's how you use various models to represent decimals.